It sounds like a prideful endeavor. It also sounds like a hell of a lot of work. How did you get involved in this in this establishment of a Jamaican team, and where is the program right now?
Well, our founder and CEO, EJ Phillips, he and his father were talking about the possibility of a Jamaican team back in 2010 as they were watching the gold medal game between Canada and the United States. And it just kind of went from there. It just snowballed. EJ called a couple of his friends. Webster Smith, who was a world-renowned figure skating coach, was stationed out in Iceland, and they were buddies, I guess. And so it just evolved from there. Several phone calls were made. And about a year and a half later, phone calls made to me, and I was asked if I would be interested in getting involved, and I jumped at it. I thought it would be great. As far as where we are now, we're in the very beginning stages. This has been in existence for 5 years as far as the idea is concerned, but it's starting to take some traction now. We're right now looking to establish a program. We need to find players, first of all, of Jamaican or Caribbean descent. We'd like to enter into summer tournaments or some sort of a showcase, or perhaps even a summer tour of playing professional teams in Europe, and then just building up momentum and awareness so that we can attract investors to help us fund the rink and the youth hockey and education program in Jamaica.
Hi, Graeme. It's Ken Reed. Just wanted to ask you about the search for players. How are you finding guys? But I mean, when you look at the NHL, I mean, you see a guy like PK Subban. His dad came from Jamaica, so PK is out there, but he's played for Canada. So where are you finding your players?
Well, the only possible way to find players that could qualify to play at that level is using going to Canadian and American players, much the same way that countries like France would attract French Canadians, and also Italy was attracting Italian Canadians, and several of my former teammates and fellow Canadians actually play in the Olympics for Italy. So that's what we're going to have to do. That's where the idea came from. When I saw Paul Di Pietro, Canadian, scoring 2 goals against Canada for Switzerland in 2006, and the idea popped into my head. Hey, this is possible. It's a world game, and you don't have to necessarily be from that country. You need to be a citizen. So that's how the idea came to be, and we're just going to basically find the best players of Caribbean, Jamaican descent, and build our team from there.
Graeme Townshend joins us on Primetime Sports. He is the head coach of the Jamaican men's national hockey team. Now, one of the things, and you mentioned this, one of the reasons that I think there's, and again, Graeme, you know as well as I do, people are going to look at this and kind of roll their eyes. But when you think about it, there's only so many players who can make Team Canada. And there's an awful lot of talented players who aren't going to be able to make Team Canada, or for that matter, Team USA. And if you can start gradually by working your way up through the various pools, this is not, people are going to say 20 years is a long time, but you know what? It's a bit of a long shot, but you can actually see how something like this could take root, can't you?
Oh, absolutely. One thing that inspired me this summer is watching the World Cup of Soccer. If I remember correctly, the U.S. team had, I think, 5 Germans who had never even stepped foot in the United States in their entire lives. They were born in Germany to American parents, mostly servicemen and women, and they got to play in the World Cup. I mean, think about that. They weren't the quality of player that Germany wanted for their team. They didn't make the German team, but they were able to play in the World Cup, the biggest event in the world. There's no reason why a young Canadian, Canada could easily put, I'm going to sound arrogant, but Canada could probably put 4 teams, maybe 3 teams in the Olympics that could compete. Obviously, you can only enter 1 team, so there are 3 teams worth of players out there who I'm sure would love the opportunity to compete. And for athletes, it's all about competing. It's not so much, you want to compete for your country where you're born and whatnot. That's definitely true. But if you have a chance to just compete in that tournament, you'll take the opportunity. So I don't see why it's not as outlandish as I first thought it would be. When I saw the number of players that we had access to this past weekend, it really blew my mind. There were some incredibly talented kids out there. I was just my jaw was dropping at how good these kids were.
Yeah, can you just expand on that camp you guys had a little bit and where these? were kids coming from all over the world to come to this camp, or was it mostly Toronto? Where were kids coming from?
So we had kids from all over the world. We chose Toronto because I have a friend who runs a very successful youth program in Toronto. It's called the Skills Hockey Program. They're a great youth program in Toronto, and he had access to a lot of Caribbean kids, kids of Caribbean descent, all excellent players. So we had good players from as far as Sweden, Virginia, Maryland in the States, Alberta, and of course kids from Toronto. So they kind of came from all over.
Any names we might know?
Probably not. There are a couple of Tegan Moore plays in the ECHL for the Colorado Eagles. You wouldn't know him, I don't think. Then there are a bunch of youth players, 15 and 16-year-old kids that play in and around the GTHL. Some kids that play for the Marlies. One kid was from Halton, Ontario. So, I mean, they came from all over, and they're probably names you wouldn't know.
Mm-hmm.
I'm sure a couple of them are going to be drafted in the OHL draft next spring, so you'll know who they are then. But right now, these are just kids that are just trying to make a name for themselves and trying to work their way through the hockey environment and get to the NHL.
Graeme Townshend joins us on Primetime Sports. All right, let's assume that this thing does that you are successful in getting a team together. Graeme, what is the process for getting the team certified? How would you start the process of building towards being in the Olympics and actually competing in the Olympics?
Okay, well, Mary Phillips she's responsible for all of our media and research and things of that nature. She's been researching the IIHF regulations. One of my assistant coaches, Tony Martino, he and I 3 years ago went through the IIHF handbook, if you will, and we basically came up with a flow chart. And first and foremost, what you have to have is you must have a rink, a regulation-sized rink in the country. You've got to have a youth hockey program of a minimum of 100 participants. You also have to have a men's league of a minimum 4 teams with a 16-game schedule. Okay, it doesn't matter how long the season is. It could be 2 months, could be 3 months, but it has to be a 16-game schedule. And then once that happens, once you have that established, the IIHF will come down and inspect the facilities to make sure it's legitimate, and then they'll make their recommendations to the council, and it goes, or the Congress, and then it goes from there to a vote. And if we're able to get in, then what has to happen is we start entering the World Championship pool. So we probably have to start off in the lowest division, which is Division 3, I believe. And we'd have to win, from what I understand, reading the rules, we'd have to win the Division 3 World Championship. So that's countries like Greece, Northern Ireland, to name a few. And then what has to happen from there, if we win that, we'd have to move on to Division 2. We'd have to win that level. And then I believe it's Division 1, where you've got countries like Italy, Austria, it's a very tough division. We have to win that division, I believe. And then if we won that, we would get into the championship division, which includes Canada and all the big boys. And that's the World Championship tournament that's held every year where NHLers attend and all that. Then we'd have to qualify in an Olympic year. So let's say we were going to the 2022 Olympics. We'd have to get to the championship division by 2021. We would have to qualify amongst the top 12 teams, and then we'd be able to be in the Olympics in 2022. That's what has to happen. But nothing's going to happen until we have a rink. It'll be impossible for us to enter any international competition unless we get a rink.
Yeah, I was going to.
That's the next step.
I was going to say, I'm trying to. I mean, it's not having a rink in Jamaica isn't as silly as it sounds. I mean, I was in Brixton during the Olympics in the Brixton Ice Palace in that part of London. It was jammed when I was down there. There were a lot of people. There were a lot of people skating. Is there how would you go about getting a regulation size arena built and establishing the league in Jamaica? That would seem to be the issue for me. Would you look at maybe having almost like a summer league? Like
exactly.
How would that work?
What you do is our plan is to use an existing building. Years ago when I played in the IHL, I was playing in Houston, and we were in Las Vegas. The Las Vegas Thunder had a team. They played at the Thomas Mack Center on the campus of UNLV. They did not have an ice plant in that rink. It was a concrete floor with no pipes.
Right.
And I remember skating on the surface one practice, the first time I'd ever been there, and it almost sounded like we were skating on an outdoor pond. It sounded hollow. Come to find out, they had a rink mat system. So there was this plastic mat you roll out on the ice, and it had the pipes encased in the plastic, and you built the ice on top. Well, my friend Tony Martino in Chicago, he runs a youth program. It's an outdoor rink, and he has the very same system. So in the summer, they melt, well, not in the summer, rather, once the spring hits in the outdoor rink, they melt the ice, they clean off the mats, they roll them up, and they stick them in storage, and then they just use them again the next year. So we can do the same thing in Jamaica. So now it's a matter of, now as far as the cost of keeping the ice in, we're going to have to obviously have a reduced length season. We can't keep the ice in 12 months down there. It wouldn't be cost effective. So you'd have to maybe have a 2 or 3 month window. Mm-hmm. I've had experience before where I trained a bunch of kids from Louisiana. I was a player coach on a team down there. And my wife and I started a youth hockey program in Louisiana. Kids had never skated before, never played hockey. And we had a total of 30 hours of training per year. 10-week season is what we had. And we did that for 2 straight years. So the kids had 60 hours of on-ice training. And I brought 8 kids from that program up to Maine. And you couldn't tell the difference between a kid from Louisiana and a kid from Maine when we had them on the ice with those kids. They after 60 hours of training, they fit right in. And they were able to compete against those kids. So I don't see why we couldn't do the same thing with Jamaican kids. You know, and we'd have significantly more than 60 hours worth of training ahead of them. So I don't see what, it's not really as outlandish as people think it is. It's just a matter of getting good athletes, having good coaches to teach them, and giving those kids the same access to, that other kids have from anywhere else in the world. If they get the opportunity, then it could lead to education opportunities for these kids. Let's say it wouldn't be too far out of the realm of possibility for a Jamaican child to get a scholarship, not just for track and field, but for hockey one day. It might take 20 or 30 years, but, so what?
Wouldn't that be a story?
If it has to take 30 years, it'll take 30 years.
Graeme, where do you find it within yourself to chase this dream and just to list off those things you're hoping for and to try and accomplish them? Because a lot of people might say, oh, no, it can't happen. Where do you find it within yourself to believe that it can happen and to chase and follow that?
My own personal story. It wasn't long ago when I was a child. I remember getting the Hockey News magazine and opening it up, and then right in there was an ad for Halliburton Hockey Haven. And I knew my parents couldn't afford to send me there, yet I sent away for the brochure anyway. Yeah. And I used to sit there in my room and just read this brochure and read about the camp and all the things the kids were doing and what they're being taught. And honest to God, I just sat there and dreamed about it. I knew I would never be able to go. But I for whatever reason it was, for a 6-year period, I went and asked for that brochure every year. I'd call them up, give my address, and get the brochure. And one day when I finally got to attend a hockey camp as an adult, prior to my first year of college, I said to myself, if I ever do have a hockey school, I'm gonna give other kids like me that opportunity. And so when I saw this, I said, this is amazing. I mean, here's a country. I still have relatives down there, and if I could help, even just a handful of kids do what I did, it'll be the lasting legacy for me as far as my life's concerned. I want to do it. I was told as a child that black people couldn't play hockey. We had an extra bone in our ankle. We had weak ankles. I'd given a million excuses as to why people of color couldn't play, and yet there I was playing for the Boston Bruins. And so when I saw that happen, and I did it myself, and I realized if I can do it, anybody can. Doesn't matter who you are. Doesn't matter where you're from. So why not a Jamaican child?
And Graeme, what is this appointment of you being Jamaican's men's hockey national coach? What does it mean to your family? Because you just hit on it. To get into the game. What does it mean to your family, to your relatives, to see this happen?
Well, we're not a family that really enjoys the spotlight or a lot of hype. So I've actually become very uncomfortable with it because I'd like to live a quiet, peaceful life. But my family is also very supportive. My father, he was never enthusiastic about me playing hockey. He thought it was a game for white people, and he figured I'd get hurt or something would happen, and so he didn't encourage me. And so he's really excited about this now and seeing the opportunity. And of course, my brother and sister. My sister's she's documenting the whole thing on video. She actually does a lot of filmmaking and things of that nature. And my brother participated in the tryout. So we're all very excited. The Townsends are all 100% on board, and here we go.
Graeme, listen, it sounds like a great endeavor. It sounds like it could be a very trying but ultimately very rewarding venture, and we really do wish you all our best. All your best.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it. Thanks for the interview.
Best of luck,
Thank
Graeme.
you. Best of luck, Graeme. That's Graeme Townshend. Used to be the skating coach of the Toronto Maple Leafs. He played for the first Jamaican-born player, played in the NHL for the Bruins, Islanders, and Senators in the 1990s.